Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Social Media Breakfast. If you don't know who we are a nonprofit social media board for marketing here in Madison, Wisconsin. We support professionals at any level who want to expand their skill sets, learn new things, come here, network, get free coffee, see Andy, all the wonderful things. Our focus is to teach people about social media and expand your skills as mentioned. This is our board. This lovely group of people here helps make everything possible at these events. You will see them in the audience. Please give them a round of applause or a pat on the back if you do see them here. Connect with us. Once again, social media. So make sure that you find us on our socials. Connect with us, chat with us. Tell us what's annoying you, what you love, new, fun, exciting things. Let's keep that conversation going. Our nonprofit spotlight this morning is a Shelter from the Storm Ministries, which is a transitional living program for homeless single mothers and their minor children. This important organization offers residents safe, stable environment where they can take a breath and regain confidence and grow and thrive with much support, housing, and microloans, among lots of other support. Thank you for all you do. Dream Bank is one of our major sponsors. We'd also like to thank Forward Fest, Live Well Video, thank you Faith, Melissa Carlson Creative, VW Media, Stuttle Strauss, Talent, and we really appreciate that support. Thank you so much. Andy is going to come up and talk to you a little bit more about Dream Bank.
Oh, Andy.
Woo. Good morning. How's everyone doing?
Right.
Good? All right, awesome. Everyone get some donuts? I'm holding out. Just waiting for you all, so hopefully there's some left over. Well, welcome to Dream Bank. I see a lot of familiar faces, some that aren't. For those of you who aren't familiar, Dream Bank is a free community resource that is put on by American Family Insurance, and everything we do here is meant to ladder up towards the inspiration and pursuit of dreams, in large part by helping to remove barriers for individuals. So how that shakes out, I'd say, is threefold, the largest one being the events that we host. So we host anywhere between 6 to 15 free events a month, all organized through the lens of personal and professional development. Anything ranging from how to generate more leads via Facebook ads, how to implement a diversity, equity, and inclusion program in your small team environment. We offer a lot of programs that are geared towards overcoming obstacles and barriers in dream pursuit. So we just kicked off our Making Time for What Matters Dream Academy cohort. It's led by subject matter expert John Zaratsky. He's done a lot of work with Google and YouTube through the lens of time management. But it's a really, really robust, interactive, immersive program. One thing that I'm really excited to highlight today is our Essential Life Skills event that just kicked off yesterday in partnership with Madison College. So there's a bunch of flyers at the front of our space, if you were curious, but it's meant to represent a lot of things that maybe you didn't learn in school or that your parents didn't teach you that are very pertinent to the world. So yesterday was a kickoff with personal finance or financial literacy. Next week is resumes, cover letter, and internships. The following week, goal setting and values, career exploration after that, and then we're finally capping it off with the Tenant Resource Center talking about rentals and lease agreements. So if you know of someone in your life, whether it be you, maybe a younger person in your life, would love for you to share with them this wonderful event that we have coming up. In addition to the events that we host, we also function as a drop-in co-working space. So I know a handful of you have taken advantage of that. But right around the corner of the blue wall right there, we have a bunch of communal tables and areas for people to post up, have a quiet place to work, meant to embody, it's meant to be kind of a third space. So not work, not home, but a place to kind of build a community and a physical location to work on your dreams. Lastly, at the very back of the space, we have a very robust and interactive exhibit. It's been here for quite some time, and that's because it's awesome. It's the theme is Build Your Dream. A lot of really cool design thinking concepts and principles incorporated into that. I know a handful of you are exploring that. If you do have some time after this, I highly encourage you to check it out. And lastly, when we're not utilizing this space, we all like to offer it up to community members to utilize for free of charge. So whether it's a team networking event, a board meeting, things of that nature, we'd be more than happy to accommodate your event needs. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and kick it back to Social Media Breakfast.
Could we just get a round of applause for Andy and Dream Bank for letting us host this event here? Next, Liz is going to talk a little bit about Forward Fest, and then we're going to get on with the main presentation.
Actually, it would be Lauren.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Lauren's going to talk about Forward Fest.
No problem, no problem. I'm excited to be here with you all this morning and tell you about Forward Fest. So Forward Fest is a week-long set of entrepreneurial events that are created generally by entrepreneurs, but we take that word, we have a pretty expansive definition of that. So it includes a lot of people who are just curious about entrepreneurship, who are supportive of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. I encourage you to go and check it out. We've got 40 different events. The majority of them are free. And again, it's a whole week's worth of events and content, and you'll hear a little bit more about one of those events soon. We generally get around 5,000 people coming through our events, so you can tell we are truly exclusive or inclusive, and it's not meant to be just for entrepreneurs. So I really hope that you will go to this site and look at all of the different events that we've got going on, and hope to see you at one of those soon.
All the way down. All right, we're also going to talk really briefly about our YOLA's gift card winner. We're going to have a chance today to give away a $10 gift card to somebody. Amelia, do you want to come chat really quickly about that? Every month we try and give away a $10 gift card to somebody. How are people going to win this month?
Ooh, I get to decide.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do it after the panel.
Okay, after the panel, we will have a giveaway, so stay tuned. Good strategy. All right. We also wanted to shout out that we're going to have a social media happy hour event. We did some of these last summer, and we're hoping that it's not going to be too hot, but just be ready. August 7th, we're going to be meeting at Garver Feed Mill after work. This is just like a fun little networking event. We do them outdoors. We'll provide Ian's Pizza. You show up, get your own drinks. We'll be hanging out, talking informally about social media. So we hope to see you there, 5:30 to 7:30. And we'll be sharing more about that on our socials. So I wanted to go ahead and jump into our panel. We're really excited to be doing this topic. We're going to be talking accessibility, tips for making your social posts more inclusive. I am really looking forward to this conversation with this great panelists today. We have Gray, Bob, and Denise with us, and I will tell you a little bit more about each of them. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So Bob, who's sitting next to me here, is the communications director at the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired. He's been a communications professional in the nonprofit sector for 25 years. Over the course of his career, he's been a communications leader with organizations working in a wide range of fields, including child advocacy, community development, and education philanthropy. He's been at the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired since 2021. And in addition to those roles, Bob has worked as a consultant to many other nonprofits and contributed as a freelance writer to dozens of publications. Thank you for being here, Bob. Denise Jess is the executive director at the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired and has served as the executive director since 2016. In that role, she applies her combination of leadership expertise and lived experience to promote the independence, dignity, and empowerment of Wisconsinites living with vision loss. As a member of numerous national, state, and local commissions, committees, and boards, Denise gives voice to the vision loss perspective on a range of issues that includes transportation equity, digital accessibility, disability voting rights, healthcare access, and employment equality. We're really lucky to have Denise here today, and Denise has been here a couple other times to talk on this topic, and she always brings a lot of really insightful things to us. So thank you, Denise, for being here. Gray Miller is the campaign manager at Community Shares Wisconsin. Gray was officially diagnosed with ADHD combined type about 2.5 years ago, to a resounding chorus of, well, that makes sense, from everyone who'd ever known him. Since that time, he has become an advocate for late diagnosed professionals like him through events, support groups, his writing on medium.com, and the ADHD Open Space podcast. He lives in Madison in spite of many escape attempts to be close to his kids and grandkids, works at Community Shares Wisconsin, and loves sketch notes and paper crafts. He's also a member of our board. So we'll kind of get into a few questions here. We're also going to do a screen reader demo about halfway through, so I just want to let everybody know about that. But I thought we would start with kind of an open question about what is your favorite social media platform? And then also, what is your favorite social media platform in terms of accessibility and why? And I'll start with you, Bob.
Thanks for starting with me, Liz. I enjoy going first. So I'm old, so my favorite social media platform is Facebook for my personal use, simply because that's where the people I want to interact with are, that's where my friends are, that's where I find out about events and the kinds of things that the people in my network are up to. From an accessibility standpoint, I'll also go with Facebook. And I'm speaking from the content creator angle because I'm not a consumer of accessibility features in social media. But the reason is it's just really, they make it easy. In contrast to, for example, Instagram, which is kind of a paradox because it's the same darn company, right? You can't put alt text on your images on posts that you schedule in advance using a third-party scheduling platform like Hootsuite or something like that, whereas Facebook makes it really easy to do that. So I'm going with Facebook on both counts.
Great, thank you. Denise, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't separate out favorite from accessible. So because if it's not accessible, I can't use it. So two perspectives. One, Facebook is the most accessible because it's story first, and image is the enhancer. And so even if the creator, the content creator, didn't make the image or graphic accessible, you know, often there's enough in the body of the post where I can glean important or useful information. So that would be my first go. On the Instagram world, the posts really are, they're very frustrating because if the image is not tagged, I don't know what's happening in the image. And then I have to navigate to the content or the comment, and there's often emojis. And so I'm like, oh, we've got the fire emoji. I wonder why. You know, so it's really can be a very exclusionary platform in that way. I do like the reels though, because those have an auditory component, and people are talking through, you know, what they want to be able to say, and it's a great way for me as someone who loves to cook, a big foodie, to get access to new recipes. I find way more than I could ever imagine cooking. As a crafter, knitter, I can access content there, and I can access really diverse perspective and different groups of folks that I might not interact with on a regular basis. And I can find affirmation, especially in looking at disability content creators. So the reels are okay. The posts themselves are much more limiting. LinkedIn, I will comment on that because I use it quite a bit professionally. It's mixed. It's kind of like Facebook and Instagram had a baby and there was LinkedIn, even though they're not the same creator at all. But again, if someone takes the time to put rich content into their post, then I can glean a lot more from it than if they're sparse with that and then don't include any alt tag for images.
Can you give an example quickly of what you mean by rich content in the post itself?
Yeah, so let's just pick like, let's say you posted an article that you want folks to take a look at. If you just have read this, it's great, or something that's very scant, that's really not useful to me. If you give the article title or a one-sentence summary of what the key, you know, the key takeaway is, now I've got the information, because with every single action that I take, I have to make a decision about how much energy can I give that thing, because I have to decide, is this worth trying to navigate it with a screen reader, or trying to look at it visually with under magnification? Is the juice worth the squeeze, essentially? So the more that I kind of get in the piece itself, in the comment or the post itself, then that gives me the motivation to decide, am I going to go further with you, or did our little interaction just end and I'm moving on?
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a great segue for me, because it is about the energy, or the spoon theory is kind of the metaphor that I like, that is out there. And for my pace, I'm gonna expand the definition of social media a little bit, because honestly, my best source of that for accessibility is actually YouTube, because of two reasons. One is I'm very easily interested in a lot of new things. And generally, if I think of something new that I want to explore, I can find somebody on YouTube who is talking about it or is reviewing it or is telling me about the 7 different versions of it that I may want to look at and help do that. And then if I do hyper focus on that content, I can usually find more deep dives and longer, videos, long form videos type things. Also, and this is where the spoons come in, like anytime I come to anything on the web, I have a certain number of spoons available to pay attention to. And the more distractions, the more sidebars, the more external links there are in there, every one of those takes one more of those spoons away. So on YouTube, I can make it full screen. Yes, they do often have the little dots on the top, but much to my pleasure, a lot of times they don't work. I love watching somebody say, just click on the box up there, and nothing's there. So that YouTube is kind of the place, including with the Reels, because I can use that to do time management. I know they're going to be short. I can say, okay, I have time to watch 4 shorts. YouTube Shorts is what they're called. I have time to watch 4 shorts, and then I'm done. And I do that, and then it's an easy way to sort of time myself in terms of that. So that'd be my favorite.
Gray, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on the
Uh-oh.
time management. Does that play indirectly with the ADHD for you?
Absolutely.
And how is that for other social media platforms?
So, technically YouTube does have an infinite scroll, in that you can just keep watching and watching, and it'll keep playing and playing, but there's enough of a gap there, as opposed to other forms of social media where I am the infinite scroll. I'm, mousing up or pushing up on my iPad or something like that. So it definitely works into that. I will say, okay, how much time do I have before I have to, I watch YouTube with my partner before we go to work. And we're like, okay, what do we have time for? Well, we have 15 minutes before we have to start getting ready. We have enough time to watch Stephen Colbert's monologue, because we can see that it is 15 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes. And so, yeah, it definitely works as a different kind of timer for time management. Doesn't mean I can't get sucked in and, that kind of thing, but that's endemic to every kind of social media.
Thank you. So Bob and Denise, you both work for Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired, kind of in different positions, obviously. So can you tell us how long the council has been on social media, what platforms you're on now, and if either of you remember sort of how those decisions were made to get on the platforms, just sort of the thought process, behind catering to certain audiences, or how easy or hard it was to navigate different platforms.
How about if I kick it off, Bob, and then turn it to you? So we have been on Facebook, was our first entry point. I came to the council in 2016, was a board member prior to that, and we had a beginning Facebook presence, around 14, 15 or so, maybe a little earlier. And that was the initial chosen platform, because it was one of the few at that point, and it had some at least decent accessibility. What was very fascinating when I came into my position is the then communications person didn't make the posts accessible. And so that was a really powerful moment for us to say, okay, we can't be putting this stuff out and not taking a lead on demonstrating accessibility, especially given our audience, which is, folks who are blind or low vision, their families and community partners. So we need to be responsible for that. So I think we were on the earlier end of making our posts accessible. We have always continued to do Facebook because that's where a lot of our followers hang out. Folks that are middle-aged and older, so it's a familiar space. We added Instagram in 2019, 2020, something like that. It was pre-pandemic. So, and it was, with the hope of beginning to build bridges to our younger audience, and did find that it's a much more complex platform to navigate, to make accessible. You've got to do it when you're posting, as Bob noted. We are on LinkedIn as well. That was something we added about that same time period. And we were on, the one, thank you. X, yes, now X. My mind does not want to wrap its mind around that. So Twitter, and we used that. We really got clear about what was our intent with each of those socials, and Twitter was really a good tool for us to do our advocacy work and to be able to reach out to political and elected officials.
Well, Denise didn't leave all that much for me to add, but I will just say that, yes, our current social media strategy is very Facebook heavy, largely because that's where our audience is. Our people skew older, partly because the population of people who are blind or low vision is getting older. That population makes up a large portion of the folks we serve, and a growing portion of the folks we serve. People ask us, why aren't you on TikTok? Why aren't you on this thing I've never heard of, or that thing I've never heard of? It's because if I've never heard of them, odds are a very, very small number of the people we're trying to reach are on it too. So I just don't have the capacity to do all of the platforms. So we focus on the ones that we think we're going to reach the largest share of our intended audience through. I'll also add that, one of the reasons why we've pulled away from X, we were posting pretty regularly on X a while back. Two reasons, really. Number one is a capacity issue, really. It's more of an interactive platform. It's not really designed to be a broadcasting channel. It's more, you have to kind of be there responding to people. What do they call it now? Xing at you, tweeting at you, responding to comments in real time to the degree possible. And we just don't have the staff capacity to be monitoring it all the time. The other reason is that the company has made some decisions that we are not happy about. For example, getting rid of their entire accessibility staff. That's not something we are in favor of. So we made a strategic decision to not put energy into X. So let's see what else to add. We continually reevaluate our mix. We could be using Instagram more, but again, it is primarily a visual platform. So we really have to think hard about how much energy we want to put into it. And when we do post things to Instagram, often we're not following what some people would consider best practice, because we're not throwing complicated visuals up there, because our audience isn't necessarily in a position to receive those well, unless we are extremely ambitious about what we can accomplish through image descriptions and alt text. So for those reasons, Facebook is really our bread and butter.
I feel like that leads well into my next question, which is for you, Bob, which is, what has sort of your learning curve been when writing, designing, and preparing posts for social media for this audience? Because it sounds like while you had a lot of nonprofit communications experience, maybe you weren't necessarily writing for an audience that was visually impaired before this. So what was your learning curve? And also, are there any, sort of easy first steps that people can take if they do want to start making their posts more accessible?
This one. Really. That's a great question. And I will just say that, I've been working at the council for, it'll be 3 years next month. And the learning curve is significant. I'm still on it. It's really a way of thinking about your content. It's a whole different paradigm. It's true that before going to work for the council, it's like, yeah, I knew accessibility was a thing. I knew alt text was a thing, but I really hadn't given a whole lot of thought to how to do it well. And to be honest, yeah, there's information out there, but you have to look for it. It's not coming at you all the time. That's why we're having events like this, right? It's just not something that is going to hit you in the face if you're not looking for it. So I guess my advice for people who are just in the early stages of thinking about accessibility with regard to social media, the couple of really easy things you can start to do are, number one, always tag your images. Just don't tag your images. And I would also add that best practice is to not just tag your image, but also include the image description in the text of the post. The reason for that, or a reason for that, is because tagging your images is obviously very helpful to people who are using screen reader software, but there are a whole lot of people who have low vision who are not using screen readers, but are still going to struggle to make sense of complicated images. They're using magnification and other tools that are not reading them a description of the post. So I guess I would say that if you are using an image in your post that you want people to understand what it is showing, describe it in the text as well. The second piece of advice I would say that's really easy for getting started is just to think about who you're trying to reach, the whole range of sensory and cognitive abilities that they may have, and make sure that your content is going to be usable by that whole range of people. And that includes not just things that have to do with accessibility for people with visual impairments or blindness, but plain language. Think about if the audience that you're trying to reach are people who are going to be able to read at the college level that you like to write at. The answer is probably, to when should you use plain language is, in most cases, almost always, unless you're posting something that is really specialized for an expert audience, and those are the only people you care about being able to understand it. If you're posting something about microbiology, maybe you're going to struggle to make that very plain in how you talk about it. But for the most part, you don't use the 50-cent words when the 10-cent words will do. So just thinking about your audience, always describing your images, both in the alt text and in the text of the post itself.
Thank you. Denise, I wanted to ask you a sort of question as well about maybe just the demographics locally in Madison or Dane County for people who want to start talking more to this audience, making sure that their messages are getting out to this audience. Do you have any research, or do you know any research about how many blind and visually impaired folks are living in Madison or Dane County, or maybe just in Wisconsin? And then what are some of the typical tools that people are using to interact with these platforms and social media? And then, we'll go into some of the common challenges as we do our screen demo.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I'm super glad you asked that question, because as Bob was speaking, I could hear the voice in my head of some folks say, well, we don't attract blind people. They aren't following us. And I'm like, how do you know? And so having an understanding of the numbers is really useful. Here's the challenge. What we choose not to measure, or what we fail to measure, becomes invisible. And so think about when you're filling out a demographic questionnaire for something, whether, they're everywhere. How often have you seen disability included in that demographic collection? rarely if ever. And so when we're not asking about someone's disability, then we're being made invisible. So getting the numbers is really challenging. And the other piece about getting the numbers is that things have to be self-reported. So a tool that we use pretty regularly is the American Community Survey that is part of the Census Bureau. That survey happens annually, and it's a very big demographic survey. And then we can pull data from it. The tricky part of that is that people are asked two questions. One is, are you blind, or do you have significant difficulty in seeing that makes it challenging to do everyday tasks, or something like that? That's kind of the main question. Because, again, there's still so much stigma about disability in our society and around blindness, people often answer no because of fear of coming out and as being seen as someone with disabilities. So often the framework that folks hold about us is we're less competent, we're less capable, we're just less than. So, who wants to get on board the less than bus? And so if folks have that opportunity to disclose or not, then they often don't. It takes a long time to work through all the feelings of disability and to have a lot of pride in that identity, which, I've had 61 years to practice, finding a lot of pride and dignity in my disability. So what we do know, based on, data that is problematic, is that our best guess is there are about 8,000 to 10,000 folks living in Dane County who have significant vision loss, whether complete blindness or low vision, and whose lives are shaped by trying to navigate a world that is really built for sighted folks. We recognize that that's likely underreporting, a little bit or significantly. We just don't really know. But the reality is that the population is projected to increase by about 118% by 2050. So with that, that's pretty significant numbers. And so the reality is that we will either become folks who live with vision loss due to diseases like macular degeneration or retinopathy due to diabetes or glaucoma or inherited retinal disease or accident. That population will continue to grow. And so we will be interacting with folks, family members, neighbors, people who want to use our social media, people who want to use and access our businesses. So building for good universal design means that you are creating an opportunity for anybody to access what you have to put out in the world, and particularly if it's, stuff around health and transportation and quality of life, that matters for making that material accessible to everybody.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think especially the pieces around like reporting and self-reporting and, filling out that information on your own and what questions are being asked is really important to share in terms of trying to even gather that data. But 8,000 to 10,000 people, in Dane County who are experiencing significant vision loss is a huge audience. So, I mean, that's really, even if underreported, I think that's good information for all of us to know. So thank you for sharing that. With that in mind, I thought it would be good to kind of briefly give a very simple overview of Screen Reader 101 is what I have up on the screen right now. With just side of saying that VoiceOver is an inherent platform that is associated with Apple products, and Narrator is associated with Windows. We're going to be using a Windows laptop. Denise has let me know that Narrator is a bit more clunky than VoiceOver. And as we were kind of walking through our demo this morning, that is very true. So we're going to go through our screen reader demo, and we'll show you some examples of posts that have some of the things that make them a little bit more accessible, as well as an example that we created that is a little less accessible. And Denise and Bob will kind of talk through some of those things for you. So I'm going to hand the mics over to them, and we'll do a little transitioning on the screen here.
Great. As Bob and Liz are transitioning on the screen, they're going to turn on the screen reader. And as Liz mentioned, narrator for me is kind of the screen reader of last resort. It's built into PCs, and I think it's really useful for content creators because it gives you a sense of how a screen reader works, what it is. VoiceOver is a far better one on an Apple product. There we go. Thanks for showing up. It will announce its presence, which is really, really useful. I use JAWS on my computers, which is JAWS, not like the shark. It's a job access, and I can never remember what the WS stands for, but it's a really high-powered screen reader, and I use that on my PCs because it really gives me much better access. So we'll go ahead and do a screen reader demo on the posts, just so you get a flavor of what those of us who use Access technology are experiencing.
And you may even get to experience the clunkiness and glitchiness of it.
You will.
Volume level 5th link, photo viewer, previous photo, next photo banner featuring the Prevent Blindness logo, the words 13th Annual Focus on Eye Health Summit, and the summit logo featuring the words being seen and heard with a graphic of a person holding their hand up to their ear. Group.
So what you've just heard is the screen reader reading the alt text that we input for this graphic. And one of the reasons we wanted to choose this one as an example is because this is an example of kind of how far you can go with this type of graphic. We always think very hard about using this kind of image in our social media posts because it's an image that uses a lot of text. When, for our audience, you're better off just putting the text in the text. But this was kind of an example of how far we're comfortable going in a way that we can include all of the key content, describe the graphics that are part of the image, and also read all of the important text without it taking, 27 minutes to find out what the thing that was designed to just be consumed at a glance is.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question. For writing good alt text, do we have some quick tips on that? How can we do it in a way that is helpful, not too wordy, not descriptive enough? What's a good way to write alt text?
Well, I'll start, and then Denise can improve on what I say. I think the key is really just to think about what information a person who is using screen reader is going to want or find important or useful. They don't need to know the length of every blade of grass in the background. Some people enjoy doing, writing a novel for the alt text. Nobody wants to hear that. But you do want to make sure that that audience does get the main information that you are trying to convey by including the image. If there's no important information, then why did you include the image in the first place? Other than maybe because you think the algorithm's going to like it. So really it is just a matter of the key information that you want people to receive through what other people are going to absorb visually.
I think awesome. I think that the one piece I'd add to that is that context really, really matters. So folks sometimes struggle with, should I describe the people and, what they're wearing racially, hair color. I mean, I've been in meetings where when people go around the Zoom screen or the Teams screen, they're describing themselves you know, and I'm kind of, as a person who's blind, I'm like, I like you a lot. I don't care, you know, seriously. You know, I think that's been a new trend that folks who are trying to be inclusive have come up. And I don't know how much we were asked as blind people, whether that was useful to us or not. Because what I'm doing is I'm making a mental map of your voice so that when we meet again, I recognize your voice and I'm like, oh, it's great. Awesome. So what you look like is, you know, in the context, it might not be useful. If I'm focusing on disability and I want folks to know that it's a diverse group of people with disabilities, I might want more of a description of that. If it's a racially diverse group and that matters to the context and to people's integrity and dignity, then I would describe that. So it's really thinking through what's important to be communicated here. And I realize that as people with visual acuity, sometimes making those decisions is really difficult because what you think is important might not really be that important to those of us who can't see it. So context matters, and don't worry about getting it wrong. It's okay if you over-describe or under-describe. Just do it and then learn as you go.
That was Denise's way of telling me I really didn't need to have told her how many buttons are on my shirt when we met up this morning. So thank you for that.
Can I add one thing in there?
Please.
For those who are sitting here going, oh my God, I'm so overstretched already. How am I going to add all these things in here? One of the things that when we met, we talked about this is that the overlapping of making your site accessible applies to different demographics. So for example, one of the hacks that people with ADHD often use and are often recommended is to turn your screen to grayscale. Okay, because that makes it less distracting with all the colors. So therefore, the same things that would go towards making an image with high contrast, more visually able to see for people who are impaired can apply to that. Also, I have spoken content activated on my iPhone as well, because for two reasons. One, because I often can hear the content better if I am doing something else. Basically, it's turning an article into a podcast automatically. And two, because I need to have things faster. Sorry about that. Yes, I took my meds today. Because I need to have things going, oftentimes people speak too slowly for me to be able to pay attention that well. It has the added advantage of you can increase the speed of the reading to what is appropriate there. So I have that activated on my, and I'm visually impaired to the point where I need to wear glasses, but it's not. So if you keep these things in mind, and another hack is to just disable images because they are too distracting from the content. So if you keep the same things that work for people who are blind and visually impaired will also help with other audiences, including the ADHD one.
Awesome. Thanks, Gray.
What is the functionality that's currently on the screen? And is that just the screen reader? That's just kind of like following along?
Yeah, so that's narrator right now because it's the Windows. So I turn that on so that it's going, and it's actually working, I think,
Volume level
better
52.
than it was. Nope. Hang on, I'll adjust it.
And those of us who use screen readers know we have a whole pocket of hacks. I love that word. So, you know, we might realize that we need to highlight the text in order for the screen reader to kick in.
Volume level 52. Yuli is disability unselected.
It's only reading.
And change the voice on narrator?
Yes, you can change the, I don't know if you can on narrator. I think you can change it to a different voice. You can also change the speed, and when I'm going through things quickly, I want it fast.
Visually impaired Facebook. July is disabilities link. Photo viewer. Previous photo. Next photo. Council staff members standing behind the council's information table at the 2023 Madison Disability Pride Festival. Group. Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired. 1. Facebook. Yuli is Disability Pride Month. A time to celebrate the diverse community of people with disabilities. Reflect on the work that has selected.
So you get the idea. And I'm going to let Denise talk about why we liked this one, but I just want to mention real quick that I work in an office where there are some screen reader power users, and yes, it talks really fast because they are really attuned to, they are well practiced in using this technology. So they can absorb the meaning a lot faster than I can by listening to it.
We chose this one both because it's Disability Pride Month now. Not Yuli is Disability Pride Month, but July is. So one of the things about using a screen reader is sometimes it picks up pieces of text, other times it doesn't. So having really good like connective thinking, like I can supply that with July instead of Yuli. But that all, again, the spoon metaphor really makes a lot of sense, because that just takes extra cognitive process to put those pieces together. But we liked this one because this is probably one of the more common Facebook sorts of posts that many people will be putting in and describing an image. And we could have told you that and named each person in the image. We could have described what was on the table, all of that, and it would have again taken away too many of those spoons for the juice wouldn't have been worth the squeeze. So it's like 4 people at last year's Pride event, and that's really quite sufficient.
Go ahead, question in the back.
Question on the last paragraph where it says image. That's a little different than I know of entering alt text, and I'm seeing that more. Can you maybe explain the importance of that?
Yeah, that was, I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but that's something I described earlier, is that our practice, which we believe to be best practice, is to include the alt text in the image itself, which is what you heard the screen reader read earlier when clicking on the image, but then to also include it in the text of the post. And that's primarily for the benefit of people who have low vision but are not using screen reader technology. So their vision is affected enough so that that it's useful to have it described verbally, that they may not be able to, they might not have the visual acuity to make as much sense of the image as a fully sighted person is, but they're not using screen reader technology.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you followed up on it. The other thing I'll mention here is that screen reader technology it's not a plug and go, so it takes training and practice to be able to use. So a lot of folks who are losing sight compared to someone like me who, really has always had limited sight, is that there's a hesitancy to learn to use a screen reader because it is a steep learning curve. It's also expensive. If you're using the freebies that are built into the iPhone or into an Android or into a PC, then that's great. But if you want something that's going to be really more powerful, then you're looking at a price point that with a high poverty population might be really outside their ability to afford. So putting that ID or image description right into the body of your post creates really a beautiful pathway for access.
Yes, other question?
Do you use the exact same text that you use for the alt text in that image description?
Almost always, yes.
Okay, so, and then do you, for tagging either people, I'm thinking mostly of Instagram, but it really applies across all of social accounts, for tagging either people or organizations or businesses, do you encourage that within the text or in the image description, or do you just use like the tagging tools?
We use just the tagging tools. So if we want to tag community shares, for example, we'll just put that in the body of the text. Last week we did X with community shares of Wisconsin, and then it's tagged. So that works really well. And when I'm using a better quality screen reader, I'll get a voice prompt that tells me that that's a live link and that I could select it and then bounce to that feed.
So with something like Community Shares of Wisconsin, would you write out Community Shares Wisconsin and then the tag?
If you type it in, and then if Community Shares is on Facebook, which you are, then it will pop up, and then it's selectable.
Yeah, so I think what you're getting is we don't want the name to appear twice,
Mhm.
both the tagged version and the untagged, because then
Right.
the screen reader user is going to have to listen to that
Twice.
twice.
I'm just thinking of like, a lot of people especially have funky handles for their
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
so there may not be, when you talk about the context, so if it's worth saying John Smith, who's
Yeah.
Yeah.
at Badger123 or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, then I think it's worth clarifying, like our Instagram handle is WC Blind. And so it might, you know, if it's going to be a funky handle, then it's worth typing out the actual name.
Although usually, you know, I believe that, I mean, I think this varies from one platform to the next, but the name of the account will show up even if you had initially typed in the handle when the tag
Mhm.
renders.
Yeah.
So that isn't a problem as often as not, but I think the real answer is case by case basis. If it looks like it's gonna come out funky, then change it.
Do you include those image descriptions in the context of the post too with something like a reel or a video?
We so rarely do them because of the accessibility issues, but we, you know, but we will always, when we do YouTube feed, which we do quite a bit, actually, we always make sure that those are audio described. So have that voice that is, you know, reading captions or describing an image, and building that in when we're creating the video, because you can't add it later. It just does not work. But then we always make sure our things are also, have captioning in them. And I'm aware of time. I want to make sure.
Yeah, I was
that
gonna say, I
Gray-
wanna keep us moving forward here
Yeah.
because we're gonna be short on time. We had one more example demo. I think that we'll just kind of quickly summarize that one, if that's okay.
Perfect.
This one was interesting because I think that AI had tried to auto-generate alt text for you. Is that correct?
Yep, I purposely didn't tag it, and you can see my text potentially that I was like, sorry, friends, I'm making an inaccessible post for a reason. And so I did not tag the image that shows the Disability Pride flag, and July is Disability Pride Month. And so there'll be a little delay because the AI is going to try to figure out what it's looking at.
Volume, alt link, photo viewer. Next photo may be a graphic of text. Group.
There, that's what I would get if that hadn't been tagged. So that's useless.
Okay, so transitioning back over, just kind of wanted to follow that up by saying, I think that really demonstrates how clunky some of this can be, and also how beneficial it can be to just go that extra step for us as marketers or for people who are creating content for social media, doing that, you know, work of putting in the alt text really makes a big difference. So I wanted to ask Gray a question here. So we're learning so much more about ADHD in this day and age. I feel like there's new research that's coming out all the time, especially about how to diagnose ADHD, but also how it's affecting different facets of people's lives, from work to home. I know that you've done a lot to create community here in Madison, online, in person, and that you're also a big advocate. So I wanted to know from your own lived experience, how has your diagnosis affected your use of social media platforms? Really huge question. And how can social media marketers maybe do a better job of creating content while keeping those who have ADHD in mind?
Thank you. That's a great question. I'm going to write an article about all of that question that you can go and read on my Medium channel. The one thing I wanted to start out by saying is, in terms of I mentioned that I'm late diagnosed. Okay, I was 53 years old when I found out that I had ADHD, which meant that I had 50 years of, as you mentioned, living in a world that is not designed for the way my brain works. Okay, and the interesting thing about that, maybe a motivation for maybe trying to make your things more accessible, is that not only are there a whole lot of other undiagnosed ADHD people, the reason it seems like ADHD is increasing, well, one theory is that it's because we're getting better at diagnosing it, not because it is getting worse. It's because it's always been there, and yet we're just finally starting to figure it out. However, you'll also notice there's an immense skewing along gender lines in terms of, because most of the research on ADHD was done on 9-year-old boys. And so a huge demographic and a rising demographic is women with ADHD, who are having a harder time getting diagnosed and a harder time finding the accommodations, but they still have it, or they may not realize that they have it, just like I didn't realize I had it. And so designing for that audience is worth it. To answer your question, I can just show you this. So right now I do have Instagram installed on my phone because I'm in the midst of a 30-day challenge that I want to try and post to Instagram more. As soon as that 30-day challenge is done, I'm going to delete it from my phone. Whether or not your question you have to ask is, how much do you care about the mental health of your audience? Because social media is designed to be as addictive as possible and keep you there as much as possible for the neurotypical brain. For a brain that is more vulnerable to that, it is deadly. Like you lose time. And so there's very simple things where, like, I have to learn to recognize if I see a timer on something. I have to remind myself that timer is probably arbitrary. There probably is not actually, only 10 minutes left to take advantage of this great offer. Because one of the features of ADHD is time agnosia. Also, some people call it time blindness too, but out of respect for our colleagues who actually have blindness, we were trying to reframe that as time agnosia, which means you don't sense the passage of time. So if I see time going on, I instantly get more anxious, which is what it's designed for. It's designed for pressure to make you want to buy, right? But there's a difference between, oh, hey, I should take care of that, and oh my God, what's going to happen? Like that's the difference in terms of that. So avoiding arbitrary time limits, also just good design. How many people here hate auto-playing things? Like if you get to thing and it's automatically going to play, really nobody is. I'll take a couple nods. Okay, yeah, we don't do autoplay because or if you do have playing, make the controls very obvious. I'm thinking that probably applies to visually, yeah. And just having the information available. Bob, I think you made something that reminded me of the phrase, begin with the end in mind. Like, what do you want your social media post to accomplish? Do you want them to sit there and keep scrolling on social media past your post, or is it designed to make them go to your website, sign up for your event, enroll in your course? Whatever that is, make that really, really clear, because someone like me, if I am on social media and I see it and I'm interested in it, I am going to transfer it to this book, or I'm going to put it in Notion, or I'm going to put it in Apple Reminders, because I know that there I can find it without distractions and I can get to it. If you're doing one of those trickle feeds, like tune in for a special announcement, and then the next day you're like, and now we're going to tell you where it's going to be, but we'll tell you when tomorrow. If you're doing that, the odds are that I'm going to get distracted from that and not find it. But if you put all the information there very clearly, I can write it down, and I'm more likely to take that call to action that you have put in there. So that's kind of how it's done, is that I have to be more judicious about it. And also, like, I've gone off Facebook, even though that's where my kids post things and things like that. There's too much stuff going on there. So literally, I changed jobs because my previous job had a lot of social media involved. It was a great organization. I believed in it. It was wonderful, but it had so much social media that one of the factors for leaving it was that I needed to get away from that. So that's the answer.
I literally have so many more questions for all of you. This is so frustrating. I wish that we could stay here all day, but we can't. You all are amazing. Thank you so much for all of this time that you have given. I know that these are really big topics. Digital inclusion is really important, and I appreciate you all sharing your time. I know that we really just touched the surface. So I am just gonna kind of wrap us up by asking each of you if you have any recommendations or resources to share of places that people can learn more, maybe any social media accounts or websites or places that you would recommend that people check out to learn more.
Well, I'll jump in and then please both Bob and Gray add. We have some toolkits on our website, wcblind.org, in the media tab, question mark?
It would be in the news menu.
Great, thank you. So there is a toolkit there on creating.
Actually, I'm sorry, publications.
Publications,
which
thank
is
you.
under news.
Great, thank you. And then, start following anti-ableist content creators. There's a great gal on Instagram who is anti-ableist makers. And she posts regularly about creating accessible texts and accessible content. And she has some beautiful examples. So following disabled content creators is just powerful for hearing from our perspective about really what works and what doesn't work.
If you really want to get into the weeds about accessibility, you could go right to the source and check out the WCAG guidelines. That's, the international clearinghouse for, everything you could possibly want to know for contrast standards and just really everything that could have an actual benchmark for being able to call something accessible.
And the probably one of the biggest ones is a young woman named Jessica McCabe, who has a YouTube channel called How to ADHD. And not only is she an amazing resource for that information, she also brings in a whole lot of guests and is very open about sharing with things like Dr. Ned Hallowell, who's a person. Gina Pera is an author who writes a lot about relationships, especially for people who are living with someone with ADHD, who does that. And there's a lot of, there's a zillion podcasts out there and things like that. In terms of designing for ADHD, the W3C guidelines, the World Wide Web Consortium, they have guidelines that are mainly towards websites, but a lot of the same stuff applies to your social media. So you can find guidelines there. And also I am, as I said, since I am a content creator as well as a social media professional and things like that, I write about it. So I'll just post my own. You can find more about ADHD in a podcast form in adhdos.substack.com, which has articles and a link to the podcast. And I also write on Medium at Gray Miller, GRAYMILLER, .medium.com. So that's where that is at.
I've got you up here, right?
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, I had a couple of resources ready as well. So Gray's writing and his ADHD Open Space podcast. WCAG that Bob mentioned is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It's an international standard. There are several versions published. They started them in 2008. The most recent is from 2023. They're really more geared toward like compliance. So it's, web accessibility. But it's a good place to start. I found this good article from BrailleWorks about social media for the visually impaired. It had some really good, useful beginner tips or actionable stuff that you can do right now. One that I thought was really interesting was about putting your hashtags in Pascal case, which I was like, this is great. The screen readers can't really read all lowercase. So if you just capitalize each word, that's really helpful. And also I thought the fact that they can't read, that they read the emojis all literally. So you're like crying, laughing face is face with tears of joy. And if you read that 3 times in a row, it kind of loses the whimsy. So, using your emojis thoughtfully, I was like, oh, these are really helpful tips. So I put that in there as a resource. And then our partners for Forward Fest have a great upcoming workshop. It's free, it's virtual. It's going to be on August 21st. It's navigating digital accessibility. Again, kind of talking about the compliance side, but they're talking about ADA and WCAG So I wanted to call that out as well. And then I believe that Genevieve is going to wrap us up. We will maybe have a little time for Q&A. It's up to you all if you want to stay. I'm sure there's questions. We covered a lot of content. So we can maybe do 5 or 10 minutes of Q&A, and then we will be wrapping up.
Liz, I'm super happy you mentioned the camel case. I can't even believe that we forgot to do that. We did. We talked about talking about it. It is really critical because if you do accessibility for all, as your hashtag, how the screen reader will try to read that whole bunch of letters as one word is they'll try to phonetically figure it out. And it's a hot mess. So then my brain has to figure out what was that? But by doing accessibility, capitalize the A, F for A for all, then it reads it correctly. So it's a very, very simple thing to do. If that hashtag's already in use, things are going to want to default to the way it was input. So you're going to have to take that extra moment to do the camel case, but boy, does it make a difference.
All right, let's move on to our Q&A. Does anybody have, go over here first?
I was wondering your perspectives on having a lot of hyperlinks in text, both from the screen reader perspective and Gray, since you mentioned distractions.
I can talk about it briefly from the accessibility for people living with vision loss perspective. It's fine to use plenty of hypertexts or hyperlinks. But the important thing and the best practice is to make sure that the linked text is itself descriptive so that the user, someone who's using a screen reader, knows what the link is linking to. So avoiding what I think, most people know to avoid now, the click here sort of link, but have it, you can find more resources about poodles and link more resources about poodles is the way to go.
And as far as, I specify, I'm not an ADHD. I'm a professional with ADHD. I'm not an ADHD professional. So this is all personal context. It depends on how much you want them to read your content, because every hyperlink that leads away from that page is another odds that they will go away from it, and they probably won't come back. Like they'll go and go and go and keep going. So I would, again, recommend that you save the hyperlinks until the very end, or say something like, here's a hyperlink, and then make sure that it opens in a new page, which increases the odds they'll come back to your content or something like that. But yeah, I'd say as minimal as possible, maybe even just have at the end, if you're interested in more, here's a page with other links, but just at the end after you've given the information that you want them to receive.
And I don't need to comment more on it. Thanks.
What SEO and social media best practices are actually a nuisance to the groups that have disabilities of some sort?
Aside from what we've talked about like the hashtags and that, I don't know that any are destructive to this, because it's all tends to be limited to within keywords and things like that, which are useful. So.
Yeah, I couldn't quite hear the question, but my understanding is really that accessibility best practices are also really good for SEO. So if you are using good alt text, that's going to help you in that regard as well.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Hi, I don't know if it's so much a question, but I've been doing some of this stuff for the last year for my nonprofit, and it's more of just an encouragement of making mistakes and trying. So I made the mistake of being too descriptive with my alt text initially, even going so far as to be like, okay, well, I'm going to say what race people are. And let me tell you, white women do not like it when you describe people as white. They let me know. So I guess my point is, it's what's been interesting is people will still, when they see sometimes the image description in the body of the post, I'll get feedback like they think I've made a mistake. So I guess my point in sharing this is I think it's really helped raise awareness of our audience that this is something that people need. Because I'll just very candidly say, these are image descriptions for people who have visual impairment. Oh, so I think it's an opportunity for all of us just to make people aware that accessibility is needed. So I just want to say, like, I've made mistakes, but it seems like my audience is caught on, so it's good.
Yeah, and kudos to you for that, because what you are doing is normalizing the human experience of disability. Disability is simply another aspect of our humanness. And so when you put your image descriptions into the text, and I think that's a side benefit of if you only alt tag it, not only is it not accessible to everybody, but it's also invisible, only then accessible to those of us that are using a screen reader. And so you're diminishing your educational impact by not including it. So thank you for including it and helping your audience understand the power of it.
And I'll just add that, there's a certain amount of trial and error to all of this. And there's also, there are corporations that have whole social media staffs and everything's getting reviewed by 16 people before it's published. And they're less likely to accidentally forget to tag something. If you're working for a small nonprofit or a one-person nonprofit or one-person company, it's like stuff's going to slip through. The important thing is to make a good faith effort to make your stuff as accessible as you can. And sometimes you're going to nail it perfectly, and sometimes you might nail it 80%, and you do the best you can.
Frankly, the smaller organizations, both profit and nonprofit, are doing a better job than many of the corporate folks, who really are like, yeah, whatever. So, kudos to the small business and nonprofit world, because we're taking the bull by the horns.
So what about posts that have multiple pictures associated with them? How do you handle that kind of in-text image description? Is that cumbersome?
Yes, it's cumbersome. We still do it sometimes. We don't do it all that much, but yeah, you just have to, try to make the order of your image descriptions match the order in which someone is likely to see the images, which sometimes isn't that opposite, depending on what platform you're on and how it's displayed. Sometimes I'm really curious about in Instagram, whether people often even realize there are multiple images. You see the one and then you're on to the next post. And did they even realize that there were actually 4 images there to look at? That's one advantage to putting it right in the narrative, is because people can say, oh, they're describing 4 images. There must be 3 more I forgot to click on. But yeah, it's cumbersome.
And I suppose it's more like cumbersome for the screen reader as well, because how does that work when you have multiple images and then you have, I guess, all those image descriptions in the text? Like, I'm just not quite sure the functionality of like scrolling through all those images, because they don't all show up, especially on your mobile or something.
Yeah, so depending on the quality of the screen reader and how grumpy it is that day, I might get the audio cue multiple images. That's super helpful, because now I know. And then I can make a decision about how much of that content do I want to digest. So, then another way to manage it, in addition to the alt tagging, is to put the description in the comments. That also works, and it's a way that I do my own personal social media when I'm posting multiple pictures. But I also really get clear about how many pictures are useful here. Like, when people do photo dumps after their vacations, I'm like, really, do any of us want to go through all those pictures from their vacation? So, it's really, again, it's about a mindfulness practice. So rather than labeling it as cumbersome, which might be our thought as creators who are very busy, reframing that to mindful. Like, how do I really want to mindfully communicate my message? And is 20 pictures a mindful communication? Something that could have been done in 3 pictures.
I don't think we've ever done 20.
No, we have 2 might be our most.
Any other? Oh, over there.
Do you have any advice for image descriptions for more database images, like a pie chart or a bar chart?
That's a great question, and I'm glad that came up. The first thing would be to really ask yourself whether that is the best way to communicate the information you're trying to communicate, because screen readers are not going to like that. You are going to have to, if you are trying to present that information accessibly, find a way to, in regular language, describe all of that data, because charts and graphs are visual ways to represent information. And so for someone who needs to digest that information in a way that is non-visual, you're going to have a challenge. So I think the first question is, do I really need to do this chart? Now, some simple types of graphs work better. Like, it's like if you are doing just a simple like pie chart with 4 sections representing different percentages of a whole, that's easy enough to describe verbally. So you can get away with that. But like a big complicated table, it's going to be really hard. And so I guess the best answer I can give is that really good content for a social media post?
I think I'd add to that, this was particularly germane during the COVID-19 pandemic. Department of Health Services would put out graphics on their social that were incredibly dense, and then say something in their post about, numbers are on the rise or something like that, very, kind of nondescript. And so, using my ability as an advocate, had a conversation with them to say, it would be far better if you want to put that in, make sure that it links to where your reports are, and then make sure that your website is accessible, and then I can actually go and read the report, but also maybe put the key finding right into the social post, so that I've got a sense of what's the key data point that I really need to be paying attention to during this public health crisis, and then link it so I can dig in and get to more if I want or need it.
I'd like to hear the ADHD answer to that question.
Wow, we've gone so far into it that it's the question has escaped my mind, because that's a good example of education.
That's great.
Can you rephrase the question one more time, please?
I was just curious about image descriptions or just use of data charts.
In database. Okay, yeah, gotcha. Okay, so here's the thing. My brain was going, I think that was, the original question was about the database and charts, but what if it wasn't? So, and that's part of the normalization, is to just say, and I don't say I forgot, I say, because I didn't forget. My brain is not letting me remember. And that's one of the things I'll do. Like, I will come out and say, Denise, I'm sorry that for the first 10 minutes of today, I called you Lori. Because my brain said, this is Lori. No, it's Denise. And it's not that I didn't know it, it's that my brain wasn't giving me access to that at that time. So the answer to your question is, it comes down to what is the most important information that you want them to get from that. So if there is, a big statistic that you want them to know from that graphic, say that first, and then say, either don't say the other things, or say, the other things are these, because the odds are once the description goes on, they're going to tune out, and we are going to tune out and go on, or we'll just absorb it really fast. And also be prepared for them to say, hey, that 2% thing really stuck out to me. Can you tell me more about how we did that particular thing? Because that's something that will catch attention, and you'll have unexpected questions, which is one of the values of having ADHD audience.
We will get to our question online as well.
This is more just a follow-up point to that. I would say that the best practices for things like that are complicated often also just apply to everybody, because a complicated data point in which you haven't sold it, because I just finished working for the Badgers, and so a lot of our communications and PR was like, you better have your headline right at the top, because everyone's going to slide right past it anyway. So from a just complicated standpoint, if you can get that data point right there at the front, then you're going to be able to
to share that with the world.
Yeah, the vulnerability thing goes both ways, and that, I said that, ADHD, people with ADHD are more vulnerable to the tricks that we use to keep people in social media, but the converse goes as well. If you can get someone who has ADHD to focus on your page and get your content, then people who don't have it are really going to be able to do that much better.
All right, let's go to our online question. Daniel asked, are there some Facebook groups that you follow who consistently do a good job with alt text so you know the juice will be worth the squeeze?
Oof. No, it's really mixed, especially if it's a group where individuals can be able to post. I'm on like ED Happy Hour, for example, and some of those posts are beautifully accessible and others are not. But I often follow groups where there's less visual content. Because it's a less cluttered space and takes less of my bandwidth cognitively and emotionally to navigate.
All right. Next, we have a $10 gift card to give away for YOLAs. Is there anyone here that it's their first time at Social Media Breakfast this morning? We're going to go with the embroidered shirt, tank top. You're our winner today. And please make sure to join us for our next event on August 21st. This will be included as part of Forward Fest. Once again, very happy to be included in this event, as it's for entrepreneurs of all types, startups, anyone looking to get into tech. This is your event. Please join us for You've Got Mail, Unlocking the Power of Email Marketing, with our speaker, Bryant Vanderweerd, who is also our photographer.
I just want to say a final thank you to our panelists, and thanks for everybody for coming out this morning. Have a good day.
That's awesome. Good question.